let's go ahead and get into the demo here. I am going to do kind of a two-phase demo. We have a 5000 T in our lab, a single one, but also I have a simulator that has a two appliance system with a DR box, so we can kind of look at replication and stuff of that nature and go into some of the features that mine will not show. So just a quick review. I'm sure everybody here has gone through presentations in regards to PowerStore, but just for a quick review. So there are two models of PowerStore. We have the PowerStore T, which is, we'll call it more of your traditional SAN NAS environment. And you have the 1000 through 9000. And then you have the PowerStore X models, same thing, 1000 through 9000. The difference there is that the PowerStore X models, you can have built-in ESXi servers in there. And kind of some of the differences here in size and power between them. If you notice, the max drive is really the same between the 1000, 3000, and the 5000 through 9000, also the same. The only differentials are the in memory per appliance. So everything else is supported drives, the embedded ports, the I/O modules, and expansion shells are all the same across the board. So without further ado, let's get into the GUI here. As you can see, it is a HTML5. If I can remember the password. And what we'll find as we go through this demo and through all of the screens is really it all has really the same look and feel throughout, very consistent and very easy to navigate. So here in the dashboard, we have our quick overview that tells us how many appliances are in the cluster, any alerts, and also any LUNs that we're watching. In this case, we kind of have four LUNs that we are watching and monitoring. That keeps it here in the watch list panel. And then over here on the far right is our dashboard for alerts. Right now I've got them all cleared, thank goodness, but any minor, major, or critical will be listed here. And then it gives us a quick information here underneath the cluster on volume groups, number of volumes that are there, and how many hosts, and also our file systems. If we go here into capacity, we can kind of get a quick glance of our current physical usage and kind of the trend over the time. We can scroll across and kind of see any bumps or rises. We can also look at differences in time from 1 month, 24 hours, a month to 2 years. And we can also export those out into different charts and CSVs if we would like for further tweaking and stuff. So here we also have our data savings with overall efficiency, snap savings and thin savings. Don't look too much here into our data reduction because the data that I'm using to run workload is non-dedupable, non-compressible data, so it's kind of skewed a little bit. But prior to me running the workload generation, we were getting about 2.6 to 1 in our VMware environment. And then finally here on the dashboard, we have the performance screen. And again, we can look at last hour, kind of go through, we can zoom into a particular time and break that down and reset back. We can last hour, 24 hours, month, and 2 years. We can also take a look and go and add bandwidth detail, IOPS, latency, IO size. And again, we can export those out to charts and CSVs and image files. And then moving on, going into monitoring, this is also where the alerts are. If I had any, events that have occurred. And on each of these screens, you can filter, and you can also customize it by adding different columns and things to further to your liking. Next, we have the compute section, which is where we have our host groups, virtual machines, and vCenter server connection. Now, with the X model, any of your VM or ESX servers that you have running on there will be displayed in the virtual machines. And if you have any vVols passing through, those machines will be listed there as well. So going down in, we got host and groups. This is where you add, just like back in the day with normal with host groups and things like that, creating the host, adding HBAs, or your iSCSI connections. So you can simply add a host and, select our server, click next. Everything is really wizard driven, whether fiber channel or iSCSI. And since I really don't have anything, I've already got everything connected, nothing really to add, but it's all quick and easy selections. We'll disregard that change. And then as we go, again, virtual machines, this is more for the vVols if we had any, and also on the X model if you had any servers or things running on your X model. And then vCenter server connections, this is where you register your vCenter, and you can actually launch your vSphere straight from here, connect it to your VASA provider, and get everything set up. And then storage, underneath storage, we have our volumes and volume groups, storage containers for our vVols, and then your NAS server and file systems. And the one thing is that you can go down into each category, or you can go straight into create a volume, volume group, storage containers, etc., straight from the drop-down list. Now in protection is where we set up replication, protection policies for like snaps, and then adding your remote system for replication. And I'll go through that in the simulator since I really don't have a remote system in our lab environment. Next, we have migration tab. This is where we can do migration actions and internal migrations, basically as a federated appliances. As we add more, we can use the internal migration to move a device from one appliance to another. And then we also have the import storage. This is where you can import from Dell and EMC previous generations from the SC series, Compellent, Unity, and say VNX2. You can just simply add the remote system and start going through the wizard. And then the imports is any sessions that you have active and what status they are to do the final cutovers. Next tab is the hardware tab. This here is a couple of things to note here. The hardware tab is where you would go to, and you'll see it in the simulator, is where you can bounce between appliances if we had more than one. The other thing to note is with the PowerStore is that one thing you do not see from folks that have more experience with EMC products, there is no serial number associated for tracking and things. It now goes by the Dell service tag and express service code. Okay, any questions so far? We'll take a little bit of a breather, and I'm going to have a little sip of this Pilsner here.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of beer talk on the chat, which is obviously awesome to see. Just kind of catching you up on that one up there. I actually had a question. You kind of went over the vCenter integration in terms of, I think, vVols. What other feature functionality does that integration with PowerStore bring?
It's mainly around vVols and being up, and we'll get into it a little bit with the users. with VMware admin role, but it's really for the integration of the vVols.
Okay, thank you.
I had a question about the migration portion. You
Yes.
mentioned that there were actions that you could take. I was wondering if you could do migrations to non-local systems, you know, maybe VMware and hosted at AWS.
You mean as far as migrating things to the cloud and things of that nature?
Yeah, like you know, you can host ESXi servers, vCenter servers up at AWS and migrate it to other locations such as that.
Not that I'm aware of now, but that may be something a part of the future. It may be a lot like previously there was CTA or cloud tiering appliance, things like that, but nothing straight there as far as I'm aware.
Okay, thanks.
As at this release.
Yeah, generally the import external storage is, you know, a migration within the same facility. When we start moving workloads, you know, across the wire or a cloud, usually the aspect is more specifically around networking. How do we handle, you know, routed traffic, or if we're stretching layer 2, the considerations with that in a public cloud kind of setting. So this is more of, you know, we've had a traditional array, arguably within the same data center, maybe adjacent racks, and we're looking to move off of that onto this platform, bringing over all the initiators, if it's Fiber Channel or iSCSI, all those settings, you know, and mappings of, you know, host groups and the actual data into the PowerStore. So that's generally that right here.
Yeah, this is kind of like migrating it from your old VNX or old Unity or compellent system and migrating the host and the data into the new storage system. Does that help?
Yeah, that makes sense.
We're getting a chat over here just to verbalize that. Rich Holmes from Dell EMC said VMware on AWS could be use HCX on PowerStore X to do, I think, what you're talking about.
Very cool.
So it does sound like there is some products that definitely facilitate that. So.
Yeah, Jeremy, if the PowerStore here were on the on-premises part of a VMC environment, VMC on AWS, then you could use HCX to migrate back and forth.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, let's go ahead and get into the hardware section and finish up this portion of it. So again, this is where you can go down and get into the different appliances that you may or may not have. If we click on here, again, looks similar, very similar to the dashboard that we started with. Again, this is particularly just for this particular appliance. And same thing, performance. Excuse me, we can look down here and check the performance. We have different options of categories of latency, IOPS, bandwidth, IO size, and CPU. And we can see the alerts, any ports, and the hardware for this particular appliance. And inside here in the hardware, we can see all of our drives. We can blink the LEDs per drive or all of them. We can get the serial numbers for the drives, the part numbers. We can look at the rear view, click around, and if there's any errors here, there will be, or any issues, there'll be some yellow or orange marks that notify us right away. We can click on here to get the exact information, or we can click on the left pane. Now, the one thing I did find when I was, after we got this installed, is I can actually go in here to the SP and go in and actually get performance details of that particular SP to find out how its performance is doing. Again, we can look at different categories and IOPS, timelines, and again, we can also export those out as we need. Next, we can also, from the hardware, we can go different routes. We can look at the different ports and basically get us right back into the hardware view and get right down to it so that it can show us exactly where we're at. Internal view, many of us have seen this, from other systems where you get the internal view and you can look at components, get part numbers and things of that nature. And same thing, if there's an error on it, it will show you with a nice yellow indication, and there will definitely be a display that there's an error there. Okay. So next is we go over here to settings, and this is really where administration-wise, where configuration, setups, and everything of the PowerStore itself. One of the key features here is the upgrade. This one is you go to the support site, you get the latest package, download it onto your system, and you simply just upload it, completes a health check, do your upgrade, and then it deletes it, or you can delete it after you're done. In this case, you can see that we started out and we've done the upgrade to the latest code of 10105. And right here is where this happens. Licensing, not a lot to do here because it's all there for you. Power down, you can power down the cluster, but you have to have the service account password to do that. Security, any certificates, encryption keys, which are stored on the SPs, you can download those for backup purposes to pull those. Some of your audit logs, your CHAP and SSH information to enable or disable SSH access into the appliance. Next section would be your networking for, if you need to do jumbo frames, if you're doing iSCSI, probably want to move that up. If you ever have to change your IP addresses for your management and storage ports, then any configurations for your infrastructure servers, your SMTP setup. And then the next here is your support assist, which is an internal system for reporting back to Dell EMC. Simply enable it, select the Cloud IQ and the communication and everything, set up the contact information for support. Next is a service where you can change your service account password, which, generally after initial install, you change it, and this is where you can update it as you need. Support materials, this is your log collection for any time you need to have support or whatever, you can start this collection, and generally most of the time it will automatically upload it to support, and you can run those. They run nightly, or you can do one on the fly as needed for support cases. Next is your general information, where you can go in, support forms and pull out documentation and things of that nature, start a parts replacement, open a service request. Disable support notification if you're doing some maintenance, or say, a few times in my career, I've had to do power outages where doing something and I need to disable alerts. This is where you go and disable call home or any alerts temporarily. And next is where you can add users. Go in here and simply add them, create a role-based administrator, storage admin, operator, VMware administrator, and security administrator are the options. And each of them have their own roles and privileges. And then finally, you have your email notifications if SMTP is set up. And then finally is the online help. So you can go in here and fantastic little help screen. You can go in and look up those roles and privileges and kind of see what those are. and fantastic for quick references and digging into the system, and fantastic help. So I've already used it several times. Last one thing I wanted to show you is some quick links to whether Cloud IQ, or if you have your vCenter set up, you can simply click there and go straight into your vCenter and be able to access that quickly straight from the PowerStore console. So before we switch over to the simulator and kind of look a little bit dig a little deeper into the replication stuff, is there anything anybody wants to address or any questions?
So I have something I want to raise really quick here. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I know when you got, you know, you and I installed the unit here at Advizex, before we put any workloads on it, you were a former Dell EMC employee where you did a lot of testing on various storage arrays, both internal and other competitor arrays. Can you talk about some of the performance testing that you did with the PowerStore kind of as you received the unit early on? And what maybe some of those preliminary, you know, benchmarks kind of look like?
Yeah, actually, I was very impressed with the performance of this, and that's kind of one thing that that I've done here is right now I'm running it at max for what I can do right now with our lab equipment. And it's bouncing around between, you know, 135 to about 115. And I'm running a mixed load with VD Bench, and we have 3 physical servers that I'm connected to with 6 workers. And right now I'm running a mixed workload of, I think it's 60 read, 40 write, and it's got a range of from 4K writes up to 64K. And I'm basically, I still have plenty of room on my processor. You know, this one's still running about 80, 85%, depending on what's going on. But I've maxed out how much I can push from my servers to really push this thing anymore. I was able on a 100% read, which I'll kind of change over when we take a little bit of a beer break. And I was able to hit, you know, really about 408,000 IOPS, but that's 100% read. And I was able to really hit the marketing number. And so I was very impressed with the performance on this thing for what we have. But basically, I basically set up 6 workers and generating using VD Bench. And again, it's non-dedupable, non-compressible, so I can kind of fill it and see how it ran, whether it was full or whatever, and things of that nature. And it did extremely well. Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, I was just looking for just a kind of a quick summary, you know, overall from performance, and obviously with synthetic data, we're not seeing tremendous amounts of compression or dedupe given the nature of the tests. But, you know, I know historically in past we've opened up for, you know, select customers that, you know, hey, bring your data, you know, to our lab, obviously sanitize what, and then we can kind of model and look like what the compression deduplication kind of rates are for, you know, workloads, because obviously no 2 workloads are the same. But, you know, I know this is exactly what you used to do. Would, you know, kind of almost the R&D department of, you know, break and fix competing arrays and Dell EMC arrays. I just wanted overall thoughts and views of the overall performance.
What's this compared to Unity with the CPUs and such?
Yeah, I will say that this definitely runs, and again, it's all dependent on the workload, right? The larger block workload you're going to have, your IOPS are going to go down, your bandwidth is going to increase, which is the nature of it. But what I've seen here is that it for this, what we have right now, it definitely, it's like between, it's really above a Unity and between, say, really kind of a Extreme IO and PowerMax. And it can, I know exactly where you're coming from, Kenny. But you know, it does push some good IO. So I've been relatively impressed with it.
I think you might have missed it. You started talking. I believe Kenny had a question: is how does this compare? I believe it was around the processors compared to the Unity XT. What is that like in terms of horsepower?
Let me pull that up. Give me just a second. Jason, are you still there?
Is that CPU as a whole, Jeremy?
Or
for both CPUs?
It's putting them together. It doesn't separate them.
Okay.
Like you see on where you have SPA, SPB, and you're looking at that from a Unity. It's all across the board together.
Okay.
I can't break it down if that's what you're asking.
You're just beating the crap out of it.
Yeah. And she's humming right along.
Yeah, she's
I'm
humming.
beating it, and
120,000.
And she's humming right. Yeah, in about 2.5 milliseconds.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah. So. All right.
So I may have missed it, but you mentioned linking to vCenter earlier. Is that just a link, like where you actually input vCenter, or does it actually have the ability to look in and do any kind of monitoring at the host level to look at disk latency at the host level?
Yes, and I'll show you that in the simulator as we kind of go. But basically what this is I just went in and set up the VSA and registered the vCenter in it with the IP address or name, you know, and I can launch it from here. We're not running vvols, so that's one step I was trying to get to, but I didn't have time to get to it. And I'll show you kind of some of that in the simulator. Does that work?
Let me chime in here real quick. I'm going to kind of further that a little bit. With Cloud IQ, and Cloud IQ is basically the software as a service, which is included with Dell EMC arrays. It's a free charge. I mean, it's not a free charge. It doesn't make any sense. It's free of charge, which allows basically cloud management, monitoring reporting of performance metrics. And so what happens is the PowerStore or Unity, or if you have different arrays also on the floor, they feed into this Cloud IQ service offering. And within that, you can actually have more verbose information by leveraging a Cloud IQ appliance, which you drop. And then what that does and allows you to do is correlate the VM information from vCenter and tie it to your storage array, to the PowerStore, so that you can see that, hey, this VM is incurring this latency because we're pulling that data from the vCenter. We're also seeing that full path of storage IO through the fabric, you know, to the front end ports and everything that it's processing within the PowerStore. And basically Cloud IQ is that management platform which ties those data points all together to give you that full scope of path of the data flow and performance characteristics of that path. Does that answer your question a little bit further?
Yeah, I think so.
All right. So let's move over to this simulator and kind of pick up some of the differences here. And again, the simulator has two appliances. And you can see some of the alerts that are on it. So we can go into the different appliances and see how each differential is performing. To go and look at, say, virtual machines, we can go in here and look at this VM, and we can see the performance of the VM. Look at latency. Where's latency? Oh, yep, there's latency. IOPS and things of that nature. Okay. So going back real quick to the migration actions, we can go in here and look at, say, the import import the external. And so in this case, there is a VNX and an equal logic that's been configured in order to pull a migration. We can look at the imports and see which ones are completed, what state they're in, and then these two down here are copy in progress. We can look at the remote hosts, the import host. Okay. And again, this is more for bringing data into the PowerStore T. All right. So let's go look at some replication. We can go into and see what devices and go in and look at and see how they're running, what state they're in, what the replication role is, and remote system and sync time. We can pause replication, we can synchronize it, and we can do a planned failover, one click, and once it's failed over, we can fail it back and things of that nature. Now, one of the other things here is protection policies that I'd like to get into real quick. And protection policy is basically your snapshot policy. So we can go in here and we can look at the snapshot and see that this snapshot rule 1 is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 12 hours, 3 days retention. And all snapshots here are read only. And this one also, there's also down here is a replication rule as well, which we'll get into here in a second. So your replication rule, you can rule name, what the target is, and then your RPO from 5 minutes to 24 hours. And you can set your alert threshold from, if it's not making it within 5 minutes, up to 24 hours for it to happen before you start getting alerts. And so we can go in here to volumes, and we can create a new volume. And we'll make it 50 gig. Our quantity is 1, 50 gig. And we can tell it to auto place it between the two different appliances, or we can set it to appliance 1 or appliance 2. We can set the protection policy and whatever performance that we're looking for, whether high, medium, or low priority. We can assign it to a host. And this way I'm not going to assign it to a host, and then up here you get the job running notification. And I can't remember what I named that darn thing. There it goes. There we go. And so we look at it, we can go over here to the protection policy, and we can take a snapshot immediately if we'd like to. And we can tell it what the description is, whether we don't want it to automatically be deleted, or we can set a retention until date. We can take a snapshot of that. And if we want to actually assign a policy to it, we can go in after the fact and say, okay, let's set up a policy for that. Just say apply. And now she's assigned a protection policy too. Now the other thing we can do is we can say, hey, can go in here and say, hey, let's create a thin clone using a snapshot. And we can call it that way we can present it to a host, and we can call it medium. We can assign it to a host, and if we want to, we can also assign it to a protection policy, and we can create that clone for if we want to test that line on a host or anything to make sure everything was golden. We can also go in here to this demo and say, hey, we want to refresh snapshot or restore from snapshot. So any questions there?
So you're taking a snapshot at the volume level, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you have the ability to restore a single VM, to drill down and restore a single VM using your snapshots?
I'll have to look at that, especially from the V-Ball side. And if you wouldn't mind write that down in the chat, and I'll get back with you. Fair enough.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I have a question. So can this device be used as a NAS device full time and not as like a block device?
So that is a fantastic point you bring up. So the one thing about PowerStore is that upon implementation, you have to decide whether it's going to be block or unified. And so, yes, everything can be NAS. You can set it up all for NAS, but right now at its current release, NAS is not. You can't replicate the NAS. That is coming in the next release or future release.
Okay. So also, what protocols are supported for the NAS function?
Oh, good question. So you have, just put it on the general production. So right now, you have SMB, NFS version 3, and NFS 4.
Okay.
And you also have, give me just a second. You can also do let me go to the file server. So you also have, you can also do FTP and such as well.
Yeah, FTP and FTPS. And
SFTP? Secure FTP?
FTP.
Oh, okay.
Where are the protocols listed? Is it somewhere?
Yeah, let me, this is Patrick. I'll look that up for you.
It's also in the, spec sheet.
After reviewing documentation, SFTP is a supported protocol.
Oh, okay. That's good. So would you say replication for this is not going to be available until the next release? Is that what you said?
Yes, sir. So right now it can replicate block async by async, and NAS is in a future release. Yes, sir. Not out of the gate.
Right. Okay.
Do you have an estimated time for that?
Next release.
Well, I know that could be 2022.
No, I do not.
This
Not
decade?
offhand.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yes, definitely this decade. So,
We're getting a response from Dell EMC, less than 1 year. Thank you, Rich.
thank you.
All right.
11 months, 29
So,
days.
So Jason, you still there?
Cut that guy off.
No, I'm
So-
a little parched. I need to know what next beer I can have.
Oh, yeah, I'm still here. Yes, the Hefeweizen.
Yeah. Hefeweizen. All right, that's where I'm going.
All right, we got another question from Kurt. He's like, he says, I'm not getting the place of this where this sits in the infrastructure. It seems like almost HCI, but not really. What role is it supposed to play? Yeah, this is a little bit of a differentiator, because what you're starting to see is a kind of a convergence of feature functionality of the Unity and the compellent. And if we look at the compellent line, it's called federation. And going forward, within the PowerStore, it is called clustering. So the idea is that there's top rack switches for backend communication when there's multiple clusters, and each one of these clusters of the different models can be, they could be the T series, or if you have one that's more performant, and basically the idea is to have an HCI like storage platform providing you the data, block data access, right? So, the idea here is to, never have to perform a traditional migration from a storage array going forward, right? Because the idea is with the right connectivity is that, and becoming part of the cluster, that data migrations from an old SAN to a new SAN will not exist. So, and I think even as Jeremy was going through the demo, there was like auto select what appliance, and so that also assumes that there's more appliances that it can select from based off workloads. So, but yes, it is very much feeling like HCI for a block storage platform. That you're reading between the lines is absolutely accurate there, Kirk.
So I know earlier you were showing the nodes. How many nodes, or how large can this scale out?
You can actually scale it out to 4 appliances and three additional expansion enclosures per appliance.
So it'd be 1 appliance and 3 expansions. Is that what I'm seeing?
Yeah. Well, what you can no, this is appliance 1 that has the base enclosure, which matches our 5000T. Appliance 2 in here has base enclosure and then 1 expansion enclosure. Appliance 3 here has 1 base enclosure and then 2 expansion, and then appliance 4 has the base plus 3 expansions. So each appliance can have up to the base enclosure plus 3 expansions.
And do you know how large the data would be on them? So the basic appliance has X amount of space, correct? So 384.
Well, yeah. So you're talking a max.
Well, that's memory. I'm sorry. I don't see.
Yeah.
I don't see.
So max drives. So 96 drives times whatever drive type you have in there.
And I think some of the larger drive types, today are in the 15, if not larger range per drive. So, did you have in that sheet there that you had there, Jeremy, in terms of max capacities per appliance?
Give me just a second.
All right. So, Rich, also thank you again for all your support on this one. 15 terabyte NVMe drives up to 96 drives.
Mm-hmm.
So that is
so here is
1.4 petabytes before compression deduplication per appliance.
That should do it.
I hope. Oh, and looks like Jeremy has the spec sheet that I was thinking about here up here too. Perfect. Thanks, Jeremy.
Just had to get it.
You have a handful of beer. I mean, I get it. It takes a little bit.
It takes a little bit. And by the way, Jason, that Hefeweizen is very good. All right. Any other questions?
Now, can you leave that screen up for a second, please?
Sure. More than happy to send you the spec sheet as well.
Yeah, what's your per appliance? 1,000, 3,000, 5,000, but you only showed like 3 on the other side.
Yeah, ours is a 5,000. Ours is a 5,000 T model. But as you see, they all have the max drives, same. They're all 96 drives. The difference is around the CPU and memory, or cache memory.
They all have 4 CPUs per appliance?
Where you see that?
That is correct.
So CPUs per appliance?
That's correct. And what we've seen in the storage market here with that is with the advent of SSDs, and we started seeing this at the end of the VNX line and the Unity line going to Unity XT, is that the flash drives over SAS, and then now we're seeing an emergence of Optane or NVMe. The bottleneck has shifted over to the CPUs in terms of how fast it can do interrupts to read and write to the drives, and obviously with the overlaying of compression and deduplication. So we're in a current state where the cycles on these based off the drives, there needs to be a lot of CPU horsepower to keep up with the storage I/O. Obviously, in some of the testing, Jeremy was doing 400,000 IOPS. Yes, that was read, but those are all a cycle a CPU has to do. So, but yes, so yeah, they are very beefy CPUs.
So for a VDI environment, we're looking at VDI, and we're looking at HCL hyperconverged solution for that. How would you recommend this over hyperconverged, or would you recommend hyperconverged over this for VDI?
It's very use case dependent, right? Even when we just take, VDI and we could become a little bit more granular, and there's also kind of a scale question too. How many users are we looking at? And there's a lot of factors to say which one is kind of the right approach for your organization. Either technology is a great technology that will definitely fulfill the VDI conversation, whether it's a traditional, fiber channel storage with, connected servers to provide VDI, or I do a vSAN environment or a VxRail, and I distribute my storage I/O, right? There are very deep, there's different technical differences. And that's really getting to the weeds of the technical, like ones and zeros, which Jeremy certainly can do. But there isn't a smoking bullet to say, hey, this one is clearly better than the other one. Some of my largest customers have 50 servers behind in Extreme IO providing hospitals with VDI. On the other hand, I have large public education facilities that's a rack full of VxRail providing VDI workloads as well. So each one we take by a case-by-case basis. We look at the requirements, both technical and business, and we help guide that conversation. So I wouldn't say that, at this very broad level, one is better than the other. That's without further qualification. That's too broad of a brush to paint with.
Okay. Also,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
From within vCenter, do you have the ability to spin up storage in the PowerStore?
So, Jeremy, correct me if I'm wrong, that there is vCenter plugins where you can literally provision PowerStore LUNs within vCenter, so you never actually have to go to the PowerStore GUI, if I'm not mistaken. Is that accurate?
That is correct.
Because that was a feature functionality introduced, I think, earlier on in the Unity days, which was pretty native. So I know that was a feature I used when I was internal IT. So I would not expect that to go away.
On the CPU, so what you showed on CPUs is pretty much set. You don't have any options for CPUs for faster gigahertz or anything like that.
No, it's an appliance,
No,
and
that's,
yeah, we help size you within what appliance based off your workloads with the data that we gather in terms of the IOPS that you're currently exhibiting or looking to consolidate to, and then we use that as kind of an indicator of hey, is it the 1000 or the 9000 or something in between in terms of the storage performance requirements.
But wouldn't this also affect your ESXi performance?
This is, are you talking about the other model? This is the model PowerStore T in terms of just being a storage appliance.
Okay, just storage. All right,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah, this is not the other model, correct. Sorry about that.
No problem.
The one thing is currently right now, the X model can't, in the future release, will be able to be federated. Right now, it's not federatable, if that's a word. But as far as T, as far as, you know, will it affect the performance? Not sure what you mean by that, because there is some, you know, if you're dedicated to, say, a PowerStore, just like back in the day with Extreme IO, there's recommended settings for optimal performance if you're connected to an Extreme IO, if you're connected to a PowerStore. But I guess kind of expand upon that question around will this affect my performance on my ESX? All right. Is there any other questions? And then we'll get to the beer tasting.
I was getting a text from Pat Zollner. I don't know. I kind of put him on the spot. If he wants to unmute, I think he might have something he might want to talk about if he can, but he might not be.
Yeah, go ahead, Pat.
Oh, go ahead, Pat.
Hey guys, thanks. So I'm not sure I'm not sure I'll do this justice, and maybe I'll ask Tom Patasek to help me here. But one of the other features of PowerStore coming forward is really around kind of an anytime upgrade path that's available for moving from a 1000 to a 3000 and so on and so forth. And Tom, I'm going to put you on the spot to help me with the details, because I'm sure I'll probably butcher it, but it definitely is an advantage. It doesn't cost you, or it doesn't require you to renew your maintenance like some other vendors out there when you upgrade or add another controller, upgrade the controller, and so on and so forth. So Tom, can I put you on the spot?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you pretty much said it there. It gives you a couple of different options, and one is to add to an existing system, or upgrade the controller of an existing system within, like, I think 6 months of your first purchase. And you
no, it's not within 6 months. You have to wait at least 6 months before you upgrade it. That detail I do know.
I'm sorry, that's what I meant. I mean,
yes, okay.
After 6 months, you're allowed to upgrade it, and it's something that you purchase up front as an option, and you pay a little more in maintenance. But that payment gives you some flexibility down the road of making some choices as far as, whether you want to, upgrade the controller to be like a new generation. If today you bought a 3000 and 6 months from now or 9 months from now, we introduce the 3500 controller or something like that, the next generation, you can do that upgrade. Or you can upgrade from a 3000 to a 5000 while we still have the same family or the same generation of controller. So, and yeah, it's just, if you wanted to do it with another, with another array, you would just pay for the cost of the controller, instead of having to pay for, instead of getting an entirely free array, you'd be able to do it as another storage array and get a credit for the controller, for kind of that controller upgrade.
Yeah, and hey, Tom, Brian's here as well. The other option we've got available. So there's 3 different options available in the anytime upgrade. You've hit 2 of the 3 very well. We can go from a 3000 to a 3500. We can go from a 3000 to a 5000. We also give a credit to the customer toward an expansion. So if you've got, as Jeremy and Patrick showed us, the number of arrays, if you start with 2 appliances and you need to scale out instead of up, we will give you a credit toward that 3rd appliance to deploy after the initial 6-month waiting period. The other nice thing with the program is it does not require any sort of renewal. If you do a 3-year prepaid maintenance program with the anytime upgrade add-on to your Pro Support Plus contract, you can do that upgrade and we don't tack on an extra 3 years of maintenance and force you to pay for that. So you can wait out your 3 years and decide, hey, this is great and all, but we got a new CIO that said we're going to the cloud. Or at that point, we can then look at renewing maintenance for another 3 years, which would then give you, another quote unquote token for the upgrade over that next 3-year period as well.
Yeah, so we'll also definitely get you a document out so you can forward out to all the folks on the call to make sure that you understand those upgrade paths.
And one other thing I wanted to add too, I was just typing it into the chat, is that the sizing tool is really detailed. It takes into account pretty much everything, like what kind of app you're going to be running, if you're running VDI, and whether you're running a T model or an X model. So if you are running, virtual machines on the actual storage array, the PowerStore, you can enter in data about those virtual machines. And that'll all go into the sizing tool that, Jeremy and Patrick would be looking at to determine the sizing of the storage array you're going to use.
All right, thanks guys for that. I appreciate that. And I think right now we are gonna, kick it over to Jason for an additional beer tasting, I believe.
I'm ready if everyone else is.
And of the hour, I will give the screen to you, my good man.
Okay. All right. Thank you all very much.
So you just go up and share your screen if you would like.
How do I do that? Just punch on my.
Down at the very bottom of your screen, you should see a share button.
Should be green.
There we go.
If you need to share anything or if you're just doing a video or whatever.
I'm just doing me.
Oh yeah, Jason, you shouldn't need to share your screen then. You can just be you. Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, thank you all for having me to do this. Really appreciate the opportunity. We're Yazoo Brewing out of Nashville, Tennessee. We started in 2003. We are Tennessee's oldest standing craft brewery, independently owned and still independently operated. We're on our 3rd location. We started at the Marathon Motor Works, which was a small motor company that the building was pretty much in shambles and falling apart. We got a piece of that in 2003, worked out of that for 5 or 6 years, moved over to the Gulch location, which is now one of the hottest spots in Nashville. We outgrew that space pretty much logistically. Trucks could not get in and out anymore because of all the hotels and everything. So we moved from that space roughly 1 year ago this week out into River Bluff Drive in Madison, Tennessee. We're 8 miles from downtown Nashville. So we're still in Davidson County, Nashville proper. We overlook the Cumberland River. I tried to get a few shots out there when we started, but the rain came pouring through the river outdoor patio. So just a brief history of Yazoo. Linus, the brewmaster and owner, went to the University of Virginia as a engineer, finished his master's at Vanderbilt, got a job with Bridgestone Tires. And he said he's sitting in there one day as an engineer and couldn't figure out how he could make tires any more round. So he left a great job as an engineer to start brewing in the basement. Funny how all these stories sound kind of the same. 17 years later, he's on his third location. We're roughly, I would say, 50,000 square feet of capacity. And then we've got an indoor tap room, about 4,000 square feet, outdoor patio of another 2,500 to 3,000 square feet. So we are kind of the craft story of Tennessee. We're in every location in Tennessee. We had recently expanded into Georgia and Alabama at the 1st of March with great success until about the 3rd week of March. And we all know what happened there. So there we are. That's a brief history. I won't make it too long. The first one, though, that we did sample is the Pilsner. And you'll see on the, I think everyone got cans, is the Datio Pilsner. This is named after Parker Bullitt Hall, which is Linus's grandfather. He played football at Ole Miss, and then he got drafted by the Cleveland Browns in 1939. And the name Datio comes, all the grandkids call him Datio. So
go Browns.
He was the first Rookie of the Year and League MVP in the same season in 1939. So this is an homage to him and the Ole Miss Rebels, Hotty Toddy, for only Southeastern Conference fans. So it's a traditional Bavarian Pilsner. It's 5.6 alcohol by volume. So it's a little bit bigger of a Pilsner than a more of an American style, and 28 to 30 bittering units. So it's dry hopped on the end with a cascade of American hops blended together to kind of give it that little hoppy bite, but not overpower it on the back end.
Woo! Thanks, Jason. I was out at Lake Norris all week last week. I love Tennessee.
Oh, yeah?
Jason, real quick question for you.
Yeah.
How many states are you available in? We have folks on the phone from kind of all over the eastern seaboard, from Tennessee up, and even some folks probably down in Georgia and Alabama, which you mentioned. So where can we get your beer other than Tennessee and the states you mentioned?
That is it at the moment.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, we had looked at, probably a half a dozen states in 2020, which isn't going to come to fruition. But and right now, honestly, Georgia and Alabama are limited, and a little bit limited in Mississippi, just because that's Linus's home state. So we've got a few things there, but very, very limited. So mainly Tennessee will be the only place you can really purchase this at the moment.
Awesome.
All right.
Nothing on. We can't purchase from online.
Oh yes, yeah, absolutely. You can purchase from the brewery online.
There we go.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm in Knoxville. I'm not having any problems.
Rub it in, pal.
How's that Total Wine in Knoxville doing over there? I love that store.
That Total Wine is wiping out the other people.
That's what I heard.
Anybody nearby cannot compete with them.
It's a blessing and a curse.
It is, but I'm sorry. If you're $8 less a fifth and you're right next door, it's hard to justify.
Yeah, absolutely. And not to get too far off the rush. How does the Carolina beer translate across the border in Tennessee? Because I know North Carolina is a hotbed for craft beer right now.
In Knoxville, the Asheville beers are huge. They've even got breweries here. They're not brewing here, but they're transferring it over.
Yeah, okay. That's interesting.
I mean, when you're talking from Asheville to Knoxville, you're less than 100 miles.
Yeah. Yep. Just curious. I heard that.
As you know, Asheville has become like the microbrew capital.
Yes. Yeah. Carolina is kind of taken over for especially on the Eastern Seaboard. So
they have a big for Knoxville, Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge, the big tourist areas.
Yeah,
they have a big influence.
Okay, all right, interesting. All right.
And then Knoxville has a lot of microbrews that have popped up, like most cities have.
Yeah, Knoxville and Chattanooga are very, very, very up and coming in the craft industry. So that's good to hear. Got to keep the small businesses churning out that beer.
The problem is COVID-19, the majority of them do not sell food.
Yes.
Therefore, they're considered a bar, and a lot of them been shut down. Or beer to go only, which I'm okay drinking beer to go, but some people aren't.
Yeah, we're doing all right with our to go.
Here in Ohio, they'll deliver it to you. I like that new feature.
I don't know if they'll do that here or not.
We will deliver within a 10 to 15 mile radius if anybody's in the area. So, or
miles away from that.
Well, I'll move on here. The second one that we popped open there during the call was the Hefeweizen. This is a traditional Bavarian Hefeweizen as well. It's 5.4% alcohol by volume. So it's a little bit bigger on the ABVs as compared to most Hefeweizens are around the 4.5, maybe high on 5. But it's a traditional Bavarian style with American wheat. And then it's a two-time award winner at Great American Beer Festival. In 2004, we won the gold medal in the American style. In 2012, we won the bronze. And then folks will always say, why don't you enter every year? And they have certain stipulations to which years you can enter and which styles you can enter. So you can't enter, we can't be the New England Patriots at Hefeweizen. Sorry if that offends anybody. I'm not a Patriots fan, but that's just an analogy. So when people say, well, why don't you enter something every year? You're only allotted so many opportunities to enter. The traditional Bavarian style, very, very good. We've had great success in a lot of German accounts. And from a German Hefeweizen on draft to our style. We just did the Bavarian Beer House in the Opry Mills Mall about 3 months ago. And it's taken over their top spot. And we replaced Weinstefan, which is a phenomenal Hefeweizen, true to style German beer. And it's done very, very well. It holds up very well. It's got the banana notes and then the clove at the very end on the back end of the palate. Nice.
So what gives it that banana taste? Is it the yeast, or is it the malts, or is it a combination of all the above?
It's the yeast that we use, the wheat. What is it called? Oh gosh, it's a wheat malt, and as it brews, it brings out that aroma and releases those proteins in it.
So am I missing it, or is your cans don't show the percentage?
They do not. They do not, and I'm not going to speak out of school, but I'm pretty sure that's a Tennessee thing, because when I worked in Kentucky and Cincinnati for a long time, and everything had to have it on there. But I'm pretty sure in Tennessee they do not show that.
Well, we like to live in denial.
It's a big river. So number 3 on the list, and this is going by color, is the Cali Ipa. So this is our newest IPA that we've done. This is kind of started out as a project, small batch brew. And then we got into some grocery chain and some stores, and it really, really took off. Got a real nice nose on it. And this has got about 17 different labels you can go as a hazy New England style session IPA. So it's the hazy, it's sessionable because it's only 5.2% alcohol by volume. So it's very, very light for an IPA. And then you got a tangerine nose and then a grapefruit finish. This has just been a phenomenal beer, both in the package stores and the bars. It just drinks very well. We call it our lawnmower beer. You can drink 4 or 5 of these in an afternoon. And the actual calla term comes from the flower, the calla lily. If you have this, the can, you'll see the white calla lily on there. That's the brewmaster's daughter's favorite flower, and they actually rendered the art for the cans. Most of our cans are done by either the brewmaster's wife or his children. So this is one of my favorites. And this one, not that we stumbled into it, but it was a bigger hit than we thought it was going to be. Any thoughts on that one? It's a very crowded market with the hazy IPA, so I love any feedback.
Sorry,
It is refreshing.
I went to Dos Pieros.
That's coming.
I saw somebody on the chat talking about how good it is, so I went straight to it. By that time, I was just reaching.
All right. No, well, we can jump around. We can jump around.
No one's surprised. I'm not a giant IPA fan, but I really like this.
Thank you. That's
not super strong or hoppy.
Yeah. And then the next one on the color chart here will be the pale ale. Getting back to the North Carolina style and the Asheville. Sierra Nevada has a beautiful brewery in Asheville. It's almost a cathedral of craft beer brews if you ever get a chance to get over there and check it out. It's gorgeous. But this is kind of brewed at the beginning, Sierra Nevada and California, with the pale ale, Sierra Nevada Pale Ale. It's kind of what we were going for. This was the original flagship for Yazoo Brewing back in 2003. So it's 5.8% alcohol by volume. A little bit bigger pale ale, but only 35 to 40 bittering units, depending on the batch. So not over hop. So you're going to have a nice hop note, but a refreshing malty finish, which is where we kind of got from Sierra Nevada with the malty finish. And it used to be called Amarillo Pale Ale, and that was just from the Amarillo hops. And we just changed it to the pale ale. You might get a little bit of a bitterness at the end on the hop, and that's the Amarillo hop, which is pretty much a yellow hop. It's kind of tart. So. The next one on our list is going to be the Gerst Amber Ale. I have a bottle, I have a cold can, so I grabbed a bottle out of the cooler. This is actually not our recipe. So Gerst beer was the original craft beer in Nashville, Tennessee before Prohibition. After Prohibition, they kind of lost their way. The Chandler family bought the recipe, started brewing it, and up until I think 2011 was their final year of their craft brew pub. They were on their third location. The second one was where the Titans play at Nissan Stadium. It was this great little old, almost like a trailer shack. And they brewed beer out of it. And this was back before craft beer was even around in the mid to early 90s when I was living here. So we'd all go over there and think we were drinking something great. And they'd serve in these great big frozen chalices. And it was just fantastic. 2011, the Chandler family decided to get rid of the brew pub. They got a nice chunk of change for their real estate over there and said they're done making beer. They're moving back to Indiana. So our owner, Linus, got with their family and the son, and they kind of came up. They did the recipe over and over and over again. And they came up with the original recipe. It's our #1 seller. So this is brewed by, this is a Yazoo beer now. We do own the rights to it. It's very, very, I like to call it Yingling with a little bit of flavor. And no offense to Yingling by any stretch of the imagination, but it's just really, really smooth, really, really rich. It's 4.9% alcohol by volume. It looks a little darker than it drinks, but phenomenal beer. Cheers. and you'll pick up the caramelly malt at the end of that as well. And last but not least, Dos Perros. So I stated that Pale Ale began as our flagship, and the Dos Perros quickly took over as our #1 seller back in the early 2000, 2003, 2004. Took over. It's a Vienna style ale. And a lot of folks will call it, a Mexican lager. So it's the same thing as Negro Modelo, Tecate, Dos Equis Amber. You'll find that it comes across a little dark, but it drinks very, very smooth, very light. It is 5.4% alcohol by volume, so it's got a little bit bigger end on it as far as the ABV goes, but it's something that you can throw a lime in, take to the beach, take to the golf course, once a great lawnmower, or just sit in the garage. I love it. It's got a real nice malty finish, real caramely, but it's really, really light on the tongue and the back of the palate when you drink it.
Jason, you had a question come up. When will the cream ale be available again?
Cream ale is now year round. Cream ale is now year round.
Quick question. Quick question to everybody. Did anybody receive a cider in their 12 packs? Person might have already gotten off if they
I did.
You did?
Yes.
Did you really?
I did.
Well, guess what? You're the lucky winner. This was our golden ticket idea that we had, and just one random cider got slipped into a 12-pack that went out. And we will be sending you something. Who was it that said that? Sorry.
This is Scott Stonebreaker. Dwayne
Okay.
Stonebreaker.
Perfect, Scott. Mark you down. That's awesome.
Yeah, Tori, if you'll get his information, we'll get him a care package sent over.
Cool.
For sure.
Just make sure you give them my address.
I might give you a sip.
Well, thank you, brother. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you.
So do you want to do the first person to answer a question giveaway?
Okay. All right. For a $50 gift card to the brew pub via merchandise and/or beer, what year did Parker Hall win Rookie of the Year and League MVP?
1939.
That's correct. Who said that?
Nice, Bruce.
Whoa, Bruce, way to go.
Nice,
Wow.
Bruce.
The Browns
Good one, Bruce.
fan.
Oh.
Steve typed it fast too. I don't know who was faster, but good one, Bruce. That was fast.
Wow. Nice job. All right.
Go
I'm
Browns.
pretty sure Bruce beat him out a little bit.
All right. We'll get your information and get you a gift card.
I just need everybody to keep drinking because the Preds are winning 2-0 in this exhibition.
Yes, good
All
news.
right.
Jason, I have a question for you. This is Bruce.
Yes.
I'm curious about the lagers. Do you actually brew your lagers in like a traditional style where, cold ferment them as opposed to like ales that are kind of easy? How do you do that? Or is it more the lager yeast and stuff you use?
We only do the Pilsner, and that's the only one that we cold ferment, and that's just with the yeast. But we do cold ferment that. everything else is a ale style.
So how much can you brew in or produce in, say, a day or whatever? How many cans?
We have two 40-barrel fermenters. So our capacity is, we like to go on per year. We can probably do in the neighborhood of 50,000 barrels, which is roughly 100,000 half barrels or kegs. When we're at full capacity. We're not doing that at any stretch of the imagination right now, but that's part of the reason we moved out here to this larger facility with more tractor trailer availability.
Well, since COVID hit, I think I may have heard this aluminum shortage I'm starting to hear about. Been a little active in my garage, but anyway, that's a different story. How much do you guys do? A lot bottles, kegs, or is it cans, or what is it you guys?
The percentage bottles and cans right now are about 50-50, and everything was shifting before everything happened, probably to a 70-30 can to bottle mix, just for environment and the cost and everything of that nature. We haven't been impacted yet by the aluminum shortage, but it's going to happen. So we'll see. You know, we did a smart thing and we bought in prior to everything going on. So we label in-house. So all of our cans come in blank, and then we do all the labeling and canning here. So we lucked out on that. So we're good at least till 2021. Hopefully things can shake out by then.
Be clear, I'll drink out of a Dixie cup.
Red Solo cup's fine for me too.
There you go.
Where are you guys? Do you guys have your own hop farms, or are you buying your hops from elsewhere, or where are you getting your hops?
We buy our hops from. It's usually Washington or Oregon is where we get our stuff from.
Okay.
We do have a small hop farm in Nashville, outside of Nashville, right around the Dixon area. But that's about a once a year small harvest that we just do like a pilot small batch for. That's something around either taproom exclusive or maybe one or two kegs for the market. But for the most part, 99.9% we outsource and bring everything in.
I got to tell you, I used to brew my own beer way back when. I mean, I mashed my own and grew my own hops, and this is really good beer. Thank you for sharing with us.
Well, thank you for having us. If anybody has any questions, wants to do brewery tours, samples sent to them, you got all my information, and just let me know, and I'll get with Tori on these prizes here we got to send out, and go from there.
Yeah.
Well, cool.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. Really appreciate it. I think we're kind of finishing up here. If anybody has any additional questions or needs anything, please reach out to me or Jeremy or Patrick. I'm sure one of us can help you, get you in touch with Jason here as well.
Thank you all very much.
I want to thank everyone for joining today. It was fantastic. Appreciate the questions. Definitely like the open forum. Jason, thank you so much. The beer was fantastic. And,
thank you all very much.
You'll be seeing an order coming in from Plain City, Ohio here shortly.
I love it. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks all.
Have a great weekend, y'all.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.